My name's Jake. I'm 27, and I swear some days I feel like my family lives in an entirely different reality than I do. I grew up in what most people would call a pretty average household. Small town, modest house, nothing too fancy. My parents weren't rich, but we got by. My older brother Ryan was always the golden boy, straight A's until high school, popular, football team captain. I was the quiet kid who loved computers and saved every penny from part-time jobs. We were different, but I never thought that would matter when we got older. Then I started making real money. Not bragging, but I worked my way up in tech, invested smartly, and by 26, I had enough saved to buy a house outright. I didn't, because I like having cash flow and security, but I knew I was on solid financial ground. My parents knew too. That's when the comments started. "Jake's the rich one now," my mom would say with a laugh at family dinners. Ryan would grin and ask when I was buying him a car. I'd laugh it off, thinking it was just harmless teasing. But the jokes started feeling sharper, like there was an edge underneath them. It all started sliding downhill the day I came over for Sunday dinner last spring. I just finished a stressful project at work and wanted a relaxing night. Mom was unusually cheerful when I walked in, like she was hiding a secret. After we sat down to eat, she dropped it casually. "We finally got Ryan that car he's been dreaming about." Everyone turned to look at me like I should be excited too. I congratulated him. It was a brand new luxury SUV, not cheap. Then Mom said, still smiling, "We used your account to cover most of it. You can afford it." At first, I thought she was joking. My fork was halfway to my mouth when it registered that she was serious. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, my account?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She waved her hand like I was being dramatic. "You left me as co-signer years ago when we set up the savings account. You never use it. Ryan needed a car, so we took $120,000 from there. You'll be fine." Ryan smirked and said, "Yeah, thanks, man. It's about time some of that money got used for something fun." I couldn't even eat after that. My mind was spinning. They didn't even ask me. They just took it. My entire childhood came rushing back. Ryan always getting the bigger piece of cake, the new bike, the better room, and me being told to stop making a fuss. I asked why they didn't at least call me first. My mom's smile faded. "Jake, you have more money than all of us combined. If you can't support your own family, what's the point? Besides, Ryan works hard. He deserves it." I left dinner early that night. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted permanently. My own family had just stolen from me and expected me to be grateful. That night, I logged into the account and stared at the numbers, the missing money. My chest hurt. It wasn't even about the car anymore. It was about the fact that they thought they had the right to decide what I owed them. I didn't confront them right away. I needed to cool down, think. But 2 weeks later, Mom called and said something that made my blood run cold. "Ryan's looking at houses now, and we might need to dip in again for the down payment. You'll get it back eventually." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was the beginning of something bigger and much worse. I didn't sleep much after that phone call. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of my apartment fridge, feeling like the walls were closing in. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. My family had decided that my savings were their new safety net, their community fund, and they didn't even have the decency to ask. I kept thinking about my mom's voice on the phone, so casual, so certain I would agree to hand over more money, like it was already decided. I ignored her call the next morning and the one after that. I needed time to think, to figure out what I even wanted to say. I spent my lunch breaks pacing around my office courtyard, replaying that dinner scene over and over. The look on Ryan's face kept flashing in my head, that smug little grin like he'd just been crowned king of the family. And maybe he had. By the end of the week, Mom showed up at my apartment. She never did that. She hated the city, hated the traffic, hated the noise. But there she was, standing outside my building with a Tupperware container of lasagna, like we were about to have some sweet mother-son bonding moment. I almost didn't let her in. "Jake," she said as soon as I opened the door, not even bothering to come inside. "I don't know why you're ignoring me. Ryan found the perfect house. It's on the market now. We need to move fast or someone else will get it." I just stared at her. "Mom," I said finally, "do you hear yourself? You took my money without asking, and now you're back asking for more. Do you even know how much I've worked to save that?" She rolled her eyes like I was being ridiculous. "Of course I do. But what's the point of saving all that money if you're just going to sit on it?" This is your brother's future. Your family's future. Someday, this house will be where we all gather for holidays. You'll thank me later." I almost laughed. Thank her? For draining my savings for a house I didn't even want to live in? My hands were shaking, and not from anger exactly. From something deeper, something that felt like betrayal. "Mom, no," I said, my voice coming out sharper than I meant. "You don't get to decide how I spend my money." Her face changed instantly. The sweetness dropped, replaced by a look I hadn't seen since I was a teenager getting grounded. "Jake, you need to stop being so selfish. Ryan has always been there for you. He's your brother. If the roles were reversed, he would help you." That last part hit me like a punch. If the roles were reversed, Ryan wouldn't give me a dime. He wouldn't even lend me gas money without posting about it on Instagram. But I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't going to get through to her that day. The next weekend, there was another family dinner. I almost skipped it, but some part of me wanted to see how far this would go. When I got there, everyone was already in the living room, Ryan holding court, talking about the house he wanted. He had pictures pulled up on his phone, showing everyone the huge backyard, the open kitchen, the pool. "Jake, man, you've got to see this place," he said when I walked in. "It's perfect. And thanks to you, it's basically ours." I froze in the doorway. "What do you mean, thanks to me?" Mom jumped in. "I talked to the bank this week. We went ahead and got pre-approval for the loan. Your savings will cover the down payment. It's all set." I couldn't believe it. They hadn't just asked me. They'd started the process like I'd already agreed. I set my keys down slowly, trying to stay calm. "You had no right to do that," I said. Ryan laughed, actually laughed, like I'd just told a joke. "Dude, relax. You make more in a year than most people do in 5. This is nothing to you." I turned to Mom, and for the first time, I didn't try to hide the anger in my voice. "Close the application. Right now? I'm not paying for this." The room went silent. My dad, who hadn't said much up to this point, finally spoke up. "Jake, don't make this harder than it has to be. Your brother deserves this. He's starting a family. You're just what? Sitting on your money, living alone in that apartment." It was like they had rehearsed this speech. Every word was meant to guilt me, to make me feel like the bad guy for not playing along. "I'm not sitting on my money," I said through gritted teeth. "I'm building a future for myself. One that doesn't involve being your personal ATM." Ryan threw his hands up. "See, this is what I mean. You've changed, man. Ever since you got that big job, you act like you're better than us." That stung more than I wanted it to. I had never flaunted my success, never lorded it over anyone. I just worked hard and made smart choices. Was I supposed to apologize for that? Dinner was tense after that. Nobody talked much, and I left early again. On the drive home, I felt a knot in my chest that wouldn't go away. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had a family. I felt like I had enemies who happened to share my last name. Over the next few weeks, the pressure didn't stop. Mom kept calling, sending me listings, texting me about our future home. Ryan would send group messages with pictures of furniture, talking about how he couldn't wait to host barbecues. My dad sent me an article about the importance of helping family. It was relentless. Then one night, I got a call from my bank. A fraud alert. Someone had tried to move another large sum from my savings account. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly who it was. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling the slow burn of something colder than anger. It was the realization that they weren't going to stop. Not until I made them stop. And that was the moment I decided to take back control, even if it meant tearing down everything they thought they were entitled to. I woke up the morning after the fraud alert call with a pit in my stomach and a decision weighing on me like a brick. I couldn't ignore this anymore. The quiet, passive way I had been handling things wasn't working. They were escalating. I tried keeping my distance, tried being reasonable, tried setting boundaries. They hadn't listened. I spent that entire day going through every account I owned. I changed passwords, moved funds into new high-security accounts, even set up two-factor authentication on things I hadn't touched in years. I called the bank personally and told them to remove every name but mine from every account, to revoke any cosigner privileges my parents might still have. The representative hesitated when she saw the family connections, but eventually complied after I faxed in documentation. By the time I was done, I felt like I'd just cut off a limb. Those accounts had been linked to my family since I was a teenager. But it had to be done. Later that evening, I got a call from my mom. I didn't answer. Then a text. "Jake, what did you do?" We can't access the account. A minute later, another one from Ryan. Not cool, man. You locked us out. We were about to put in the offer on the house. You just cost us everything. I stared at the screen, my hands cold. They weren't even asking. They were accusing me, like I had stolen from them. I ignored them for a few days, thinking maybe things would cool down. But on Friday night, I came home from work to find my apartment door unlocked. My heart dropped. I knew I had locked it that morning. I stepped inside cautiously, every nerve in my body screaming. And then I saw it. My living room was a mess. Drawers pulled open, papers scattered everywhere. And sitting right there on my coffee table was my laptop, but it had clearly been touched. My email was open, my accounts page pulled up on the screen. I stood there frozen for a full minute before it hit me. Someone had been here, and they had been trying to get into my accounts. The anger that rolled through me was white hot. My first thought was to call the police, but I hesitated. I checked my hidden security camera, a small one I'd installed after a break-in scare last year. I scrubbed through the footage until I saw it, Ryan. There he was, walking into my apartment like he owned the place, using the spare key I had stupidly given Mom years ago for emergencies. He went through my mail, my desk drawers, my files. At one point, he sat on my couch with my laptop on his knees, typing. I had to pause the video because my hands were shaking too much to hold the phone. When I finally pressed play again, I saw him put the laptop back and leave calmly, locking the door behind him like nothing had happened. I felt sick, violated. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about trust, about safety. My own brother had broken into my home to try and steal from me. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' house. I didn't text, didn't call. When I pulled into the driveway, Ryan's car was there, shiny and smug in the sunlight. Mom opened the door before I even knocked, like she had been waiting for me. "Jake," she said, her tone icy, "I hope you're here to apologize. Do you realize the position you've put us in? The sellers accepted another offer because we couldn't send the down payment in time. You ruined this for your brother." I stepped inside, my jaw tight. "Where's Ryan?" He was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter like he didn't have a care in the world. "Look who finally decided to show up," he said. "Took you long enough." I pulled out my phone and played the security footage. The smirk fell off his face as soon as he saw himself on screen. "Jake," Mom said sharply, "what is this?" "It's video proof of your son breaking into my apartment," I said, my voice steady but quiet. "He tried to access my accounts. He went through my things." Ryan's face turned red. "I wasn't breaking in. I was just—" "You were just what?" I snapped, my voice rising for the first time. "Just helping yourself? Just looking for more money to take without asking? You crossed a line, Ryan." Dad came in from the garage, his face already tense. "Jake, calm down. You're making this into a bigger deal than it is." Ryan had every right. He had no right. I cut him off. "You all had no right. This is my life, my home, my money. And you've treated it like it's some kind of shared family fund you can raid whenever you want." For a long moment, nobody said anything. The air in the room felt thick, like a storm was about to break. Then Mom spoke, her voice cold as ice. "If you're going to be like this, maybe you shouldn't come around anymore. We don't need your attitude in this house. You can either help this family or you can stay gone." I just stared at her. Those words hit harder than I expected. Help this family or stay gone. Like I was the problem, like I was the one tearing us apart. I turned and walked out without another word. As I got into my car and slammed the door, my hands were still shaking, but now it wasn't fear. It was something sharper, something that felt almost like clarity. Because at that moment, I knew one thing for sure. If they wanted me gone, if they wanted me to play the villain, I was going to give them exactly what they asked for. But first, I was going to make sure they understood just how big of a mistake they had made. I didn't go home right away. I just drove. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, but I didn't even notice. I drove past my apartment, past the city limits, down empty back roads with the windows down, letting the cold air bite at my face. I needed space, space from them, from my thoughts, from everything. When I finally pulled over, it was at some forgotten overlook by the river. The place was deserted, quiet except for the water rushing below. I sat there with the engine off, staring out at the dark water, and let the anger drain out of me until all that was left was something heavier, a dull, aching sadness. It hit me then. I wasn't just mad at them. I was mourning them. Mourning the family I thought I had. The parents who were supposed to protect me, the brother I used to play catch with in the backyard. Those people weren't real anymore. Maybe they never were. I stayed there until it was almost midnight, then finally drove back to my apartment. I locked the door behind me, double-checked the deadbolt, and leaned against it for a long time, just breathing. My apartment had never felt so small, so vulnerable. That weekend, I started pulling away completely. I stopped answering texts, stopped picking up calls. I blocked the group chat my mom kept spamming with updates about Ryan's life. At first it felt freeing, but the silence started to eat at me. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach knotted, wondering if it was them, wondering if they'd show up again. The first real blow came a few days later when I got a letter from my parents' lawyer. It was written in polite legal language, but the message was clear. They were threatening to sue me. Sue me, their own son, to recover the funds wrongfully withheld that they claimed had been agreed upon for Ryan's house. I laughed when I first read it, not because it was funny, but because it was so surreal. They were really willing to take this that far. But later that night, sitting on my couch with the letter crumpled on the table, the laughter turned into something else. My chest felt heavy, like I'd swallowed a stone. This was it, the point of no return. There was no going back after this. I stopped going out with friends, stopped answering work calls after hours, stopped doing anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. I felt like I was holding my breath all the time. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Then came the social fallout. Mutual relatives started calling, leaving voicemails that ranged from "Jake, just talk to them. You're being dramatic," to "You owe it to your family to make this right." My aunt left a message that stung more than I care to admit. "Your mother is heartbroken. She said you stormed out and won't even apologize. She raised you better than this." Apologize? For what? For protecting my own money from being stolen? For not letting my brother use me as his personal bank? The worst part was, there were moments, late at night, lying in bed, when I almost believed them. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I was overreacting. That was the mental loop I got stuck in. Anger, doubt, guilt, then back to anger. But then I'd look at the security footage again. Ryan sitting on my couch with my laptop, rifling through my life like it was nothing. That would snap me back. Eventually, something inside me shifted. The sadness stopped feeling like a weight and started feeling like a wall. A wall between me and them. And behind that wall, I started thinking clearly for the first time in weeks. I began taking quiet steps to cut them out of my life completely. I changed the locks on my apartment and had the spare key recut. I moved all of my remaining funds into an entirely different bank, one they had never had access to, and set up a new investment account under a different institution entirely. I also started documenting everything. I saved every text, every email, every voicemail. I made copies of the security footage and stored them on a separate drive. I forwarded the threatening letter from their lawyer to my own attorney and had him draft a formal response, making it clear that if they tried anything, I was prepared to press charges for trespassing and attempted theft. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about building a record, a paper trail that could protect me later if things got uglier. And they did get uglier. One afternoon, I came home to find a note slipped under my door in Ryan's handwriting. It said, "You think you're better than us now, but wait until Mom and Dad kick you out of their will. You'll regret this." That was when I realized they weren't just after my savings. They were trying to punish me, to break me down until I gave in. But instead of breaking me, it hardened something inside. I stopped feeling guilty, stopped questioning myself. They wanted a villain, fine. I could be the villain. The next morning, I sat down with my lawyer in his office and told him I wanted to take this further. I wanted a restraining order against Ryan. I wanted everything documented in writing. And if my parents kept harassing me, I wanted to explore legal options against them too. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter. Not happy, not yet, but in control. For the first time since this all started, I wasn't just reacting to what they did. I was starting to make moves of my own. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. When I walked out of my lawyer's office that day, the air felt different. Crisp, clear, like I'd finally stepped out from under a storm cloud that had been following me for months. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't just waiting for the next punch to land. I was standing up, gloves on, ready to swing back if I had to. The first change I made was subtle. I stopped reacting to every message and voicemail. Instead of feeling that jolt of panic every time my phone buzzed, I muted all of them. My parents' numbers, Ryan's number, even the group chat with my relatives. It was like hitting mute on the chaos. My apartment, for the first time in weeks, felt like mine again, quiet, safe. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into my projects, staying late not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And the crazy thing was, it paid off. My manager noticed the extra effort and started giving me bigger responsibilities, things normally reserved for more senior staff. I crushed every deadline. I solved problems nobody else could. 2 months later, I was sitting in a boardroom with the VP of my department, being offered a promotion, and not just a small step up, a major one. My salary jumped by nearly 40%, and it came with a significant bonus. I walked out of that meeting grinning like an idiot, and for a moment, I almost reached for my phone to call my parents, to share the good news like I used to. But then I remembered the last conversation we'd had, the way Mom had told me I could stay gone if I wouldn't hand over my money, and the smile faded. Instead of calling them, I called my lawyer. We updated my will, my beneficiary designations, and every bit of paperwork that had my family's names on it. If something ever happened to me, not a cent of my estate would go to the people who had tried to destroy me. With the promotion money, I did something I'd been dreaming about for years. I bought a place of my own. A real home, not just a rental apartment. It was a sleek, modern condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. The first night I slept there, lying on a mattress in the middle of the living room because the furniture hadn't even been delivered yet, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. This place wasn't just a home. It was proof that I could build a life entirely on my own terms. And as my life got better, there seemed to start unraveling. I didn't go looking for updates, but they had a way of finding me. Mutual friends would mention things in passing. That Ryan had lost his job after blowing off too many shifts. That the dream house they wanted had been bought by someone else. That my parents were dipping into their retirement savings to cover Ryan's bills. Every time I heard one of these updates, I felt a twinge of something. Not exactly satisfaction, but something close to it. A grim sort of validation. I focused on myself. I started hitting the gym 3 times a week, not to punish myself, but to clear my head. I signed up for a cooking class on weekends and learned how to make more than just takeout noodles. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen since college, people who remembered me as I was before all this mess. And slowly, I started smiling again. Then came the opportunity that changed everything. A colleague I'd worked with on a major project reached out to me about a startup he was joining. They were looking for someone with my exact skill set, and they were offering not just a salary but equity in the company. It was a risk, but for the first time in months, I wasn't scared to take one. I said yes. The next 6 months were a blur of 12-hour days, late-night brainstorming sessions, and problem-solving marathons. It was exhausting, but it felt good, like building something from the ground up, something that was mine. And when the company landed a massive funding round, my equity turned into something substantial. Substantial enough that I didn't just have savings anymore. I had real wealth. By the end of that year, I was in a completely different position than when this all started. I had a beautiful home, a thriving career, and enough money invested that I didn't have to worry about anyone ever holding financial power over me again. And that was when the phone calls started up again. At first, I ignored them, but the messages became more desperate. Mom left a voicemail that sounded like she had been crying. "Jake, honey, I know things have been rough between us, but your father and I really need to talk. It's about Ryan. Please call me." Then a text from Dad. "Jake, your brother's in trouble. He needs help. Please don't turn your back on us now." I didn't answer. Not yet. Because for the first time, the power dynamic had shifted. They weren't calling to demand anything. They were calling because they needed me. And a part of me knew this was the moment I'd been waiting for. When I heard my dad's message, I didn't delete it like I had the others. I just sat there in my condo, phone in my hand, replaying it again and again. "Your brother's in trouble. He needs help." It wasn't anger in his voice this time. It was desperation. I didn't call back. Not yet. Instead, I started digging. I still had connections in town, and people talked, especially when someone like Ryan started making a spectacle of himself. It didn't take long to learn what had happened. Ryan had quit his job months ago, telling everyone he was about to start his own business. He took out loans, maxed out credit cards, bought flashy equipment, and even rented a space for some kind of luxury car detailing studio. The business never got off the ground. He fell behind on rent, got sued for unpaid bills, and now creditors were after him. The kicker? The car they had bought with my money, that luxury SUV Ryan had been so proud of, had been repossessed. I should have felt vindicated, and a part of me did. But more than that, I felt calm. This was what rock bottom looked like for them. And for the first time, I was in a position not just to watch, but to decide how this story ended. I called my lawyer again. We met in his office the next day, and I laid everything out. The break-in, the threats, the attempted transfer from my account, and now the desperate calls asking for help. He leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "You're in a very strong position right now, Jake," he said. "Legally, you have every right to cut them off completely. But if you're looking for a way to send a message, there are options." That was when we started crafting a plan. Not something rash or impulsive, something careful, deliberate, airtight. Something that wouldn't just protect me, but make sure they couldn't try to spin the narrative and paint me as the villain ever again. I had him draft a formal cease and desist letter addressed to my parents and Ryan, outlining every violation they had committed, from unauthorized withdrawals to trespassing, and putting them on notice that further harassment would result in legal action. We included copies of the security footage stills, time-stamped and signed, just to remind them that I had evidence. But I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I started gathering leverage. I reached out to a friend who worked in finance, and over coffee, I asked her a hypothetical question. If someone misused a joint account to take money without permission, what could the other party do? She raised an eyebrow and said, "Hypothetically, they could file a claim, freeze the funds, and demand a full accounting. If they had proof, it could even become a criminal matter." That gave me an idea. I filed a formal report with the bank regarding the original $120,000 withdrawal for Ryan's car. The bank opened an internal review, and because I had never signed anything authorizing the transaction, they were obligated to investigate. I didn't know if I'd get the money back, but the look on Ryan's face when he found out the bank was scrutinizing his shiny new toy purchase would be worth it by itself, even if the car was already gone. Meanwhile, my life outside of them kept getting better. The startup I had joined was gaining serious traction, and I was part of key negotiations for a partnership deal that could double our revenue. My stake in the company was becoming more valuable by the week. I was on track to be financially independent for life by the time I turned 30. And that power, the kind of power they could never take away from me, gave me the confidence to finally answer one of my mom's calls. It was a Thursday evening when I picked up. "Jake." Her voice sounded small, almost timid. "Oh, thank God you answered. We've been so worried." I didn't say anything for a moment, letting the silence stretch just enough to make her uncomfortable. "What do you want?" I said finally, my voice calm. She hesitated. "It's Ryan. He's in trouble. He owes a lot of money, and they're threatening to take us to court. We could lose the house, Jake." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of that sink in. Lose the house. The same house where she'd told me I could stay gone. "I see," I said evenly. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because you can help," she said, almost pleading now. "You have the means. If you could just—" I cut her off gently. "Mom, do you remember telling me that I could either help the family or stay gone?" She was silent. "Well," I said, "I stayed gone." And then I hung up. The next morning, I instructed my lawyer to send the cease and desist letter. But I wasn't done yet. A few days later, I learned from a friend who still lived near my parents that their house had quietly been listed for sale. They were trying to get out from under the debt before it swallowed them whole. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, because I had been waiting for exactly this moment. When I heard their house was on the market, something inside me clicked into place. It was like the final piece of a puzzle I had been putting together for months had finally locked in. They were vulnerable now, financially, emotionally, socially, and this wasn't about petty payback anymore. This was about closure, about making sure they could never rewrite the story to make me the villain. I met with my lawyer again the next day. This time, there was no hesitation in my voice. "I want to make a move," I told him. "Something that makes it crystal clear that they can't just take from me and get away with it." He listened carefully, then nodded. "If the house is up for sale, there's a lot we can do to slow things down. We can file a lien, make a claim on the proceeds for the money taken from your account. That would put everything on hold until it's resolved." I leaned back in my chair, considering that. Would they know it was me? "Oh, they'd know," he said with a faint smile. Their realtor would have to tell them the sale can't close until the lien is lifted. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. I could almost picture it. Mom pacing in the kitchen, Ryan shouting about how unfair it was, Dad trying to keep his voice calm, but seething underneath. The same way they'd all looked at me when they told me they'd taken my money and expected me to thank them. Do it, I said finally. Within a week, the lien was filed. My lawyer handled the paperwork, but I got a copy of the filing and I kept it on my desk like a trophy. It wasn't about getting the money back anymore, though that was part of it. It was about making them feel the weight of what they had done. And then, just to twist the knife, I made my next move. I reached out to their realtor, through my lawyer, of course, and asked for a showing. I wanted to see the house before it sold. At first, the realtor hesitated, but when he learned I was a serious buyer, he agreed. Walking back into that house was strange. It smelled the same. The faint scent of Mom's lavender cleaner, the creak of the floorboards near the hallway. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage set, like I was walking through someone else's life. The realtor gave me the tour, pointing out upgrades and features, but I barely listened. My mind was buzzing. I imagined what it would look like if I owned it, not as a family home, but as an investment property. Renters in and out, no sentimental ties. I didn't make an offer that day, but the idea lodged itself in my brain and refused to leave. Meanwhile, the cease and desist letter I'd sent started having its own effect. My parents stopped calling. Ryan went silent. Mutual relatives who had been so quick to guilt-trip me before suddenly stopped leaving voicemails. It was as if they had finally realized I wasn't bluffing, that there were real consequences to pushing me. Then, 2 weeks later, I got a text from Ryan. "You think you've won, huh? Mom and Dad are losing everything because of you. Hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back a single line. "I didn't make you take my money. You did that all by yourself." I never got a reply. A month later, the house still hadn't sold. The lien had scared off more than one potential buyer, and word was spreading around the neighborhood that something was wrong. My parents, who had always been so concerned with appearances, were now the subject of gossip. And then came the final opportunity, the one I hadn't even been expecting. The realtor reached out again, this time almost begging me to come back. "The sellers are desperate," he said. "If you're still interested, they'll take almost any reasonable offer." I scheduled another showing, this time with my lawyer present. And when I walked through those doors again, I didn't feel anger this time. I felt something colder, calmer. By the end of that week, I had submitted an offer, below market value, but still high enough to make it tempting given their situation. It was accepted within 48 hours. I didn't tell them it was me until closing day. When my parents walked in and saw me sitting across the table, their faces drained of color. Ryan didn't come. Maybe he couldn't face me. Mom's hands shook as she signed the papers. Dad wouldn't look at me at all. I didn't say a word. Not then. Not until every signature was on the page and the keys were sitting in front of me. Only then did I look up and meet their eyes. "You told me I could stay gone," I said quietly. "So I did. But now this house, this memory, is mine. Just like my money always was." I picked up the keys, thanked the realtor, and walked out without looking back. For the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly free. When I stepped out of that closing office, the keys heavy in my hand, I felt like I'd just crossed a finish line. But there was still the fallout, and I knew it was coming. That evening, I drove to the house one last time before the new locks were installed. The place was empty now, stripped of furniture, the echoes of footsteps bouncing off the walls. I walked through every room slowly. The kitchen where I'd done homework as a kid, the hallway where Ryan and I used to race Matchbox cars, the backyard where we'd grilled burgers every summer. It all felt so much smaller now, like it had shrunk to match the people who once tried to control me. The next morning, the calls started again. I didn't answer at first, but eventually, I picked up. "Jake." Mom's voice cracked through the receiver, a mix of anger and heartbreak. "How could you do this to us? We built our lives in that house. That was supposed to be your brother's future." I closed my eyes, letting her words settle for a moment before replying. "Mom, you built your lives by taking from mine. You stole my money without asking. You broke into my home. You threatened me. You told me to stay gone. I just gave you what you asked for. You're being cruel," she snapped, but there was no real heat in her voice this time, just exhaustion. "Your brother has nothing now." "Then maybe," I said evenly, "he'll finally learn what it feels like to earn something for himself." I ended the call before she could respond. Later that week, I drove by the house again. This time, Ryan was outside loading the last of his things into a dented pickup truck. When he saw me pull up, he froze. For a moment, I thought he might yell, might storm over and start another fight. But he didn't. He just stood there, jaw tight, and finally said, "Hope you're happy, man. You got what you wanted." I stepped out of the car and looked him in the eye. "No, Ryan," I said quietly. "I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted a family that respected me. Instead, I got this. But at least now we're even." He didn't reply. He just climbed into the truck and drove away without another word. Over the next few months, the dust settled. The lien I had filed was lifted after the sale closed, and the bank's internal review finally wrapped up. To my surprise, they credited a significant portion of the $120,000 back to my account, citing unauthorized withdrawal and breach of cosigner agreement. I used some of that money to renovate the house, not because I wanted to live in it. I had no intention of moving back, but because I wanted to turn it into something completely mine. I repainted every wall, tore out the old carpet, updated the kitchen, and turned Ryan's old bedroom into a home office. When the renovations were done, I held a small housewarming party. Just a few close friends, no family. We sat in the backyard with music playing, laughing, eating barbecue, the city lights glowing in the distance. At one point, one of my friends looked around and said, "This place feels like it was built for you." I smiled. "It wasn't," I said, "but it is now." Word got around town, of course. I heard through neighbors that my parents had moved into a small rental across the city. They still hadn't spoken to me again after that last phone call. Maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe they were angry. Maybe both. And honestly, I didn't care anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't living under their shadow. I wasn't waiting for their approval or dodging their judgment. I was building something of my own, and it was stronger than anything they ever gave me. Months later, I drove past their old rental house on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Ryan was outside, this time wearing a plain work uniform, unloading tools from a truck that looked like it belonged to a construction company. He looked up and saw me driving by. Our eyes met for a split second. He didn't glare this time. He didn't smirk. He just nodded once, a small, almost imperceptible nod. And then he turned back to his work. I kept driving, a strange calm washing over me. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, but it was something close. Back at my house, I walked into the kitchen, set my keys on the counter, and looked around at the space that was now completely, undeniably mine. And for the first time in what felt like years, I let out a deep, genuine laugh. Not because I was happy they had lost everything, but because I had finally taken everything back: my money, my future, my life. I stood there for a moment, smiling to myself, and whispered the words I'd wanted to say for months. This time, I'm not leaving. And with that, I closed the door behind me, for good.